So in one of your early blog posts, I think it was part two, about your journey to the cloud, you noted that cloud computing had left senior managers with a blank look upon their faces when it was first mentioned to them. Um, I just wanted to kind of first of all how this challenging of the cultural norms had obstructed or slowed the pace of implementing the cloud.
Yeah, I don't think they understand it, senior managers, and I think when they don't understand it, it always makes them nervous.
Yeah,
So I think what you've got to do is you've got to take a bit of time and effort to explain what cloud computing was, and in our scenario, why that was the right thing to do. So I very much sold the cloud as being we don't know what the council will need in 2 years' time or 3 years' time because we don't know what our funding is going to allow us to deliver.
sure.
I'm at the end of my contract, my outsource contract with Serco as it is.
Yeah,
Um, Typically, what I'd do is I'd go back out to contract. As part of that, I'd be buying a new service, probably on a 7 year contract. Once we bought that service and done all the technology refresh, bought all the servers, that's kind of locked in cost for 7 years.
yeah,
If the council reduces in size or scope, it's very difficult to reduce my annual operating costs.
yeah.
Putting it in that way and linking it to the budget pressures and what we will potentially need in 3 years' time being very different to what we need today seemed to do the trick.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose that ties in quite nicely, as if by fate, to my second question, which was in one of the early posts you posited, does cloud provide real savings at price and quality you can afford? Thus far, I mean, I've been kind of reading your blog quite extensively, but thus far, would you kind of say that those savings have been realized? And if not now, do you think they look like they're going to be realized?
They've not been realised yet.
Yeah.
The cost model we have, which we review every month, still shows us on target to make savings.
Mm,
A lot of that depends what the remediation activity is on the number of the servers we found. So, for example, a number of the servers we've got need to be upgraded to later versions of various software
I see.
in order for them to move to the Azure cloud.
Yeah.
Now, that is going to impact my one-off cost because there's going to be additional one-off cost, and therefore, although my operating cost might be lower and there might be an annual saving, the payback period might be going out from say 14 months to 36 months,
Okay.
and we'll only know that as we get through all the servers.
Yeah. I
Um,
suppose I suppose it's kind of one of those things when you're undertaking something of this magnitude and size, you're going to kind of run into these things you didn't kind of foresee as you're kind of going along.
I think at the time we started looking at the cloud, our the cloud was quite immature, and our knowledge of the cloud was immature, so we needed that.
Mm,
I think there's a lot more now. There's a lot more available now about people's cloud experiences, so you probably don't need that consultancy piece.
sure.
There's a number of councils I know who've done cloud before Derby, so that there's probably a lot more information available within the Socitm network.
Mm,
Means getting some consultancy in is less relevant.
okay. That's interesting though that kind of as people get to know things a bit better themselves, they can kind of do it in house, I suppose.
Yeah, do it in house, or use the power of Socitm. One of the other things I did as part of the cabinet report process for saying we were going to the cloud was get a piece of consultancy done via Socitm Consulting,
Yeah,
and what I got there was access to similar sized cities, what they were doing, and of course that allows me to get access to information that might be in private,
mm,
non-published cabinet reports that Socitm members are generally happy to share with each other because it's a closed community group, but
sure.
we wouldn't put in the public domain, and that was very useful for me.
Yeah. No, that's a nice way of looking at it, I suppose, using the kind of established network already to move that forward. Um, Moving on, you mentioned that flexibility and the positives associated with greater flexibility was something that moving to the cloud was a benefit that you believed it would deliver. Is that still kind of an aspiration you have for the project?
It's still an aspiration, and even though we're in early days, we are seeing some of that happen.
Yeah,
And you know, part of the thing we didn't expect to be as far on with is we've done a number of software replacement projects this year, most of which we've done via GCloud,
yeah,
all of which have seen the annual cost of those software come down,
sure.
and most of which are going to be software as a service, which is kind of simplifying the solution from having a hardware data center organization and a software company involved. So that is proving already to increase agility. And the big surprise in that piece is when we've taken the business through those different tenders,
Yeah,
they've actually more often than not chosen a different software supplier to their incumbent one, when previously there'd been a lot of cultural resistance to change.
really.
So again, that is showing that by doing something differently and by them seeing a more agile way of doing things, they're actually moving to probably software suppliers whose products have progressed.
Yeah, more. Another kind of big question that I had for you guys was for councils looking to follow the lead of Derby and implementing the cloud. Would you recommend hosting a G-Cloud seminar or similar event to promote understanding for internal people who will be kind of needing to practice this?
We work very closely with our procurement team, and we've got our procurement team recruited an IT category manager about 18 months ago, and that's made a massive difference.
Really?
We did host in Derby a Crown Commercial Services seminar on making better use of their frameworks, and I know Crown Commercial Services have offered those since then in different parts of the country. Certainly for people who are going to be involved in the detail, I think it's well worth engaging in that kind of seminar when they become available. I don't think you need to run it within your organisation. I think you need, if you can get someone in your procurement team who specialises in use of framework contracts, it makes a massive difference.
That's really interesting. Is that kind of a lesson that you would kind of impart, as it were, to anyone looking to follow the model that you guys have established?
Certainly anyone planning to use either the cloud, whether that's GCloud or other framework contracts, having someone who knows their way around the Crown Commercial Services frameworks, really, really helpful to us.
That's really interesting. So another kind of question I had leading on from that, I suppose, was the engagement with stakeholders and the role that communication has played within a project of this size. Because I can't remember which blog post it was, but there was a lot focused on engaging relevant stakeholders, and that kind of linked into hosting a seminar or some similar event to raise awareness is something that kind of, as a person who doesn't kind of looking in and looking at your journey, would kind of say that's obviously a really important thing to have. Is that level of buy-in, does that make the transition easier, or is it just something that's nice to have, do you think?
I think it makes it easier. It's really difficult to do,
Yeah.
particularly when most of those senior stakeholders are putting forward their budgets for the next 3 years, and we're talking about yet more severe, challenging cuts. So trying to get them to engage isn't easy. We've used we've tried different methods. We've had some drop-in sessions where initially we got some attendance, but that tailed off fairly quickly. We do a weekly insert into the council's corporate weekly newsletter, and we regularly update our. We've got a special IS change section of our intranet, and I shamelessly break the council's rules and send an email once a week or once a fortnight to all heads of service. I'm not supposed to do that, but on the basis I control the email system, I shamelessly do it. I don't think you can try I don't think you can ever do too little communication, but there's a difference between you putting the message out there and them engaging. Where people really do engage is when we're doing the countdown on their individual server migration.
Yeah.
That's when they take interest because that's when they start worrying about, does it mean downtime for us? What are the risks for us? So we do find that their engagement is very much at a tactical level when we're saying, we're moving your server next week. And we give them a countdown, we give them a what we need to do, we tell them what we'll do if the server migration fails, the tests.
Mm.
But that's really when you get their interest,
Yeah. You can,
when it's very close to them having some stake in the ground.
yeah, you can kind of imagine. And I suppose the final question that have to do with the journey to the cloud, and then we'll move on to this, just a couple of ones about Socitm. Um, you noted in 8C, blog post 8C, that some of the early challenges was the kind of establishment of a joint architects board. Do you see that as quite an important thing now, or is that a lesson you've learned that maybe, there's an over-reliance on that? I'm not sure.
It's a very important thing to have,
Yeah.
particularly when you're moving from, well, in our case, an outsourced contract to a multi-source contract. Having a joint architects board and making sure that your architects are talking together and are on the same page is really important.
Mm.
The problem with, or my experience of the problem with architects is they will go off and do their architecture-y thing,
Mm.
and they don't always apply the same levels of governance or common sense. So something can be architecturally interesting and challenging for them, but is it really what I need or what I can afford? And have we done the right change processes?
Yeah.
So keeping on top of your architects and making sure they've got that business focus is really important. Also, unfortunately, architects from different backgrounds will always have slightly different opinions on the right way to do things or the right tools, and there's a danger that they can spend a lot of time disagreeing with each other rather than moving the. Yeah, sure.
So for you guys who are obviously a very involved kind of member and corporate member organization, where do you place the greatest value in the relationship you hold with Socitm? And part B of that question is how do you see that could be enhanced or strengthened?
So for me, the greatest value is it being a trusted peer network,
Hmm.
um, and that's both access to peers and sharing information with peers, but also some of the research. The research publications, the series of deep dives, they have more value to me because they're from my own network rather than um, you know, quite often there's similar publications or white papers in the public domain, but they're not specific to UK local government. So I
Sure.
get added value, and that's really, really quite important.
Yeah. So those kind
Um,
of research pieces that are tailored exactly to your needs, and because obviously they're coming from people who are in the same position as yourself, that's kind of where the greatest value is.
I think so. I think that's where you get the strength of the context of what we do.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose tied onto that, again, quite neatly, in your opinion, how have Socitm established themselves as quite, because I heard it routinely, I've only been in the job since August, but they're seen as kind of a trusted and useful organisation. Is it for that exact reason we just mentioned, the fact that it's a lot of like-minded people facing the same challenges in a position where they can communicate with each other and learn lessons of best practice?
I think that's a key part. I think different people have different views about different parts of Sockington, but fundamentally, when we come together for a common purpose, be that through the local CIO council or the research steering group. When you get in a room with those people, you understand what the common purpose is,
Yeah,
um, and when you engage, if Socitm are sourcing good quality consultants who've got knowledge of the local government sphere, they should have an advantage over generic consultants. Um, I think consultancy is always a bit hit and miss, whether it's Socitm consultancy or anybody else's consultancy.
But yeah, I suppose having that trusted label, if you will, of Socitm on it means that it's kind of going to be a bit more not I suppose maybe valued to people in your position, rather than going to like a PwC or a Deloitte or something. If it's kind of had that affiliation with the brand you trust, then I suppose more for the better, really.
You would hope so, and by and large, that has been my experience. We're using Socitm consultancy, but like with anything, occasionally you get disappointments.
Yeah, true. The final question, kind of to wrap up the interview about Socitm. Um, as a loyal and trusted member, how would you like to see the organisation develop and grow in, say, the next 3 to 5 years?
I, I think Socitm has big challenges ahead, and I'm not sure how we're going to address them. So, if we have a significant reduction in the number of councils, which I'm expecting, be that northern powerhouses, combined authorities, there might be an increasing tendency then to say, well, we only have, we'll have fewer IT departments, therefore membership will fall, and if membership will falls, then the opportunity to attract commercial sponsorship might fall. So I think we need to we need to be ready for what is going to be a very demanding time. The positive news is I thought this would have already started in the last government cycle, and it didn't,
Mm,
or didn't to a massive extent. But I think that there are going to be some big challenges ahead, and to some extent, the corporate membership concept then becomes more important, particularly if your corporate membership is covering a group of partners rather than an individual council.
yeah. So yeah, it's kind of tied into that whole idea of shared services, isn't it, I guess?
Yeah, tied into shared services, where increasingly I think whether it's formal shared services or informal, there's going to be more federation, um, both with councils and between councils and other public sector bodies.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the challenge for Socitm is how do we both make ourselves relevant to that, but also how do we avoid a reduction in membership that might be a consequence of a reduced number of single entity councils.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point actually, and I think that's kind of something that's shared from other people I've spoken to. So, um, from my end, Nick, that was absolutely fascinating, and I'm really grateful for you to take the time out to kind of just answer some questions that I had relating to that, and like I